Good morning, it's Tuesday, and we are in Tess chapters 40 to 42. And we may as well say it right now. Angel's self-centeredness just keeps presenting itself. Brazil is where he wants to go, and he's taking a hopeful view, despite the reports of people coming back from Brazil that says it's very discouraging there. Now, how many of us would pick up and travel thousands of miles to a place we'd already heard bad news about from multiple people? A mistake. And he runs into Mercy Chant. And Mercy Chant's a perfectly nice girl. Her religion and faith is very important to her. And tells her he's about to leave England. And says maybe he'd go into a cloister and be a Roman Catholic priest. And she says, I glory in my Protestantism. It's very important to me. And this is where you can see he's really losing it, because he leans close to her ear and whispers in her ear some, what he calls heterodox ideas, trying to upset her, and then stands away from her and laughs almost insanely and says, I think I am going crazy. Well, he is going crazy. He's trashed his lovely wife because of a stupid belief about aristocratic families. He's picking up and separating himself from his family. If he goes to Brazil, they'll never see him again. Yeah, he's going crazy, all right. He goes to the bank and he deposits the jewels, puts 30 pounds in the bank, sending it to Tess. Is he trying to assuage his guilt at having broken up with her? He does not put his parents in communication with her again. Why? That's their daughter-in-law. That's the person they should be in communication with. They don't even know her name. They don't know what she looks like or who she is. And then he goes to the Wellbridge farmhouse where they were supposed to spend their wedding night. It was some wedding night. Because here we see his self-centeredness. It was under this roof that the deepest shadow ever thrown upon his life had stretched its gloom over him, considering only his own feelings, not anybody else's. He's in the rooms alone. There's the mistletoe. It's dried up, fallen apart. Nobody kissed under that mistletoe. And he hears a footstep. Who is it? It's Is Hewitt, who may be lying when she says, I've called to see you and Mrs. Clare. No, she's come here to see Angel. This is a simple, honest girl, and she loves Angel. And she's quit Talbothays, just like she said she would, because it's so dismal there, and it's dismal there because he's not there. If only she knew what he was really like. So he decides to give her a lift in his gig or cart pulled by a horse. There we are again. Remember Tess's ride with Alec in his gig or cart with the horse that almost killed him? Well, here we are in a similar situation. So he tells her he's going to leave England and asks about the other girls. Well, Reddy's in a nervous state and believes no one will ever fall in love with her. Depressed. What about Marion? Well, Marion's taken to drink. Marion's an alcoholic. And has left Talbothays altogether. And I am no great things at singing afore breakfast now. So something she used to do, she stopped. Because he's devastated these other three girls. And so he now begins to stray way over the line when he says, suppose I had asked you to marry me. Okay, wait a minute. This is a discussion he should not even be having with her. He's already married Tess. That's who he should be devoted to. But no, he wants to lure this kid in. He's incensed at his fate, bitterly disposed towards social ordinances, for they had cooped him up in a corner. Again, oh, poor me. Oh, my feelings are hurt. And so he says he's going to go to Brazil and says, will you go with me instead of her? Do you truly wish me to go? I have been badly used enough to wish for relief, and you at least love me disinterestedly. That's love. He's just taking her along because he needs somebody. Anybody will do, and Is Hewitt's the anybody. It means that I shall be with you for the time you are over there. That's good enough for me. She would actually go with him. And she's in such agony, she says, she would do this. She would be his girlfriend, mistress. I don't know what the role is he wants to put her in, but he won't marry her. He can't. But now he asks a fatal question. You love me very much, is? I do. More than Tess? And here Is stops dead and says, nobody could love you more than Tess. She would have laid down her life for you. And it's true. And it brings him up short, brings him to a dead stop, startles him, and he shuts up. So he's going to just drive her back. He's not going to take her to Brazil. So there it is again. Because I have a loving wife already. He says this. Well, if she's a loving wife, then what are you doing being separate from her? He asks her to ignore his levity. Levity is comedy. Levity is humor. This was not a humorous situation. And try to forget about it. And don't tell anybody about it. So he's ashamed of what he just did. And he should be. And let there be no further bitterness. I forgive thee, sir. So that's two women who've forgiven him, but he hasn't forgiven anybody. There are more worthy men than I in the world. That's right. I shall never see them more. Women may be bad, but they are not so bad as men in these things. And he's right. He's worse than Alec, I think. He drops Iz off. She walks down the road a ways in a different direction, flings herself down, and cries her heart out. But at the end of this chapter, the facts had not changed. If he was right at first, he was right now. So this is one of those guys, one of those people who believes he's always right. He's not. Chapter 41. And here's Tess, again, in a lonely condition, walking down a country road with a basket and a bundle in her hand, just like she did when she left Trantridge and Alec caught up with her. She's left home because she can't stay there. Her mother's constantly calling her a fool and an idiot. Her father's a drunk. Her consciousness is still at that dairy, but she's disappeared. The dairy work is not lasting very long. Fall's coming on. They're laying people off. And she's having a hard time finding a job. She's got 25 of the pounds Angel gave her. Hasn't spent very much of it. And she doesn't want to let those coins go because Angel touched them. She still loves him. She's compelled to send her mother her address, conceals her circumstances. I don't know if I'd even write to Joan. Has a letter from her mother. They're in dreadful difficulty. The thatched roof of their house is damaged. They need money to get it repaired. They need 20 pounds. And so Tess, the dutiful daughter, sends the 20 pounds. I wonder how many of that 20 pounds is going to go into alcohol. Leaves a nominal sum for the whole inclement season that she's about to head into. She's reluctant to take any more money from Angel. Good. She has her pride. She's left her mother and her parents, her husband's parents, under the impression that she's ultimately going to join her husband. Remember, she has yet to meet her mother and father-in-law and doesn't want to do anything to disturb their belief. And that he'll be in Brazil for just a little while, and she's hoping he will be in Brazil for a little while, and then he will come back to her, the deserted wife. Those diamonds return to her mind. She could enrich herself. And so she walks along the country road, hoping to find a job to survive. Meanwhile, in Brazil, it's not going so well. Angel is lying ill with a fever. In fact, a lot of the English have gone over there for the cheap land, and they're sick with fever too. I think he's got malaria, which is a disease that can't actually kill you, but it lingers for a while. And if you think about fever, and if we ask our medical expert, Dr. Rafe Adnan from Harvard University, he will say, in a fever, the body's temperature goes up. The body is fighting an infection. But if you think of that heat, maybe it will burn all the nonsense and foolishness out of Angel Claire so that he sees Tess as she really is. We hope so. And I don't feel a lot of sympathy for him. He chose to go over there, and now he's sick. Meanwhile, Tess is having a hard time finding employment. and she's walking along trying to find it. She could go back to Talbothays, but she doesn't want to, because that's where she fell in love. That's where she was happy, and she doesn't want to go back there. It's too painful. And she can't bear the pity of the people there if she has to tell them the truth. So she's on her way to an upland farm, and Marion has gotten word to her that you can come on up here and work. And Marion's getting drunk regularly. The days are getting shorter, it's getting colder. She wants to obliterate her identity and doesn't want anybody to see who she is. But the darn thing is, her appearance is striking. And she's so beautiful that you can't help seeing that she's beautiful. And so when she goes into small towns, she has to listen to rude remarks from wise guys about how beautiful she is. She heads to the southwest, and one late afternoon hears footsteps behind her of a horse, and she's overtaken by a man in a cart and a horse, another guy in a cart and a horse, who says, "Good night, my pretty maid." Does that sound like Alec? Well, hello, my beauty, and what might I do for you? This guy's a total creep. And he stops and he stares at her and says, "I know you. You're young Squire d'Urberville's friend." He's being sarcastic. He knows who she is, and she's got a reputation. She's got only one escape, so she walks off in a different direction to get away from this jerk. Comes to a gate, scrapes together some dead leaves, makes sort of a nest, and lays down on it. She's going to sleep outdoors on a bed of leaves. Doesn't sleep very well. She's thinking of her husband in a warm climate. Yeah, he's in a real warm climate now. And she's out in the cold, symbolically and really, and says all is vanity. She's saying everything's worthless. If you can go back to Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre's lying on the moors, and it's raining. She has no friends. She has no money. Okay? And we yell at her, "Come on, Jane, get up. Get up, Jane." And she does get up and sees a light in the distance. Tess, on the other hand, sees something different, lying there in the dark. And she even has a death wish now. She hears this strange sound of gurgling and gasping, and it turns out that under the trees are several pheasants who've been wounded by hunters but not killed. And they're dying, pulsating feebly. They're driven there by a shooting party. You know, some guys go into the woods and they make noise and the birds fly out. And on the other side are the guys who shoot them. And these have been shot. She's caught glimpses of these hunters in her girlhood. It's a bloodthirsty, brutal kind of sport. And so rather than let the animals lie there and suffer, one by one she wrings their necks and kills them to put them out of their misery. But at the end of the chapter, she draws a lesson from this. "Poor darlings, to suppose myself the most miserable being on earth in the presence of such misery as this. I am not mangled, and I am not bleeding, and I have 2 hands to feed and clothe me." She was ashamed of herself for her gloom of the night, based on nothing more tangible than a sense of condemnation under an arbitrary law of society which had no foundation in nature. Jane Eyre gets up. Tess gets up. You cannot keep her down for very long, and she realizes, I can take care of myself in this world. Why am I feeling self-pity? So get up and get going. We're in chapter 42. And she starts again with fortitude and endurance, and sees the relativity of her sorrows compared to those poor birds back there. And this is tolerable, she says. That's how strong she is. She's too strong to be kept down for very long. Gets some breakfast at an inn, has to listen to more guys make sarcastic remarks about her looks, complimentary sort of. But she gets to a field and takes out a handkerchief, ties it around her face, takes out a pair of scissors and tries to nip off her eyebrows. She's trying to make herself less beautiful, but it's not going to work. Her beauty is too essential to her. And tears came into her eyes for very pity of herself, because she's tired of listening to the guys hit on her. One guy says, "What a mommet of a maid," said the next man. She's sick of this stuff. She loves Angel past all other men, and she hates the other men who say these things. You know, it's one thing to compliment a woman, but when you do it in a sarcastic, lewd way, it's an insult, and she's being insulted. There's no sign of passion in her now. Next day, the weather turns bad. She's got to find somewhere soon. Honesty, directness, and impartiality of elemental enmity disconcerting her but little. She's going to have to endure the weather. She goes from farm to farm, and the lighter kinds of employment, and then the employment gets harder and harder. We have not chronicled Tess's jobs, but we should. Back at Marlett, she was harvesting grain, and the work was monotonous and repetitive. Then she gets a job at Trantridge taking care of birds. It's not much of a job. There's not much. The work is light and not very demanding. But now she's going to go down the work scale drastically. And so we're in the southern part of England toward the English Channel. It comes to the remains of a village, and the place is called Flintcombe Ash. How do you get ash? Well, you burn fire. And I'm going to posit that this place is a wasteland, or even could be considered a hell. And she realizes nobody's going to think I'm Angel Claire. She gets to Marion. She stands by a wall of a house just to get warm. And she can hear the people inside, and they're warm, and she's on the outside. Tess spends a lot of time on the outside of a lot of things. And finally she gets to Marion's, and Marion has a cottage, and it's warm. And she stays with Marion. Of course, Marion starts to ask questions. Tess says, I don't care anything about my appearance, and Tess doesn't care about her appearance. She's not somebody to primp and put on makeup and all that, but she doesn't have to. She's beautiful without it. And Marion says, you don't wear your wedding ring? So Marion's asking hard questions. And she says, I don't wish people to suspect who I am by marriage, or that I am married at all. But Marion says, you're a gentleman's wife. It's hardly fair you should have to live like this. And she's right. Angel has abandoned Tess to live like a common field hand. And he shouldn't do that. Now, the work that Tess is going to get is the kind of work you can always get, because these are the worst, hardest, dirtiest jobs that nobody wants. This is the work you can always get. That's what she's going to do. She's going to hack Swedes. We'll talk about that later. They walk onto the farmhouse. The place is dreary as can be. It's cold, gray, it's wet. She meets the farmer. He hires her. And he's hiring people because he can pay him cheap to do his work. And he can make a good profit. It's a subsistence existence he's in. She writes to her parents, tells them her new address, but doesn't tell them how sorry her situation is. It might have brought reproach upon him. Yeah, he should be reproached and criticized for putting her in this situation. The next assignment is chapters 43 to 46.